Welcome to Friendeavor, the podcast, the weekly podcast where we explore the highs and lows of friendship with your hosts, Danielle and Kayla.
As we journey through life, our friendships often evolve and change, ebb and flow, and sometimes even come to an end. Danielle and I are lifelong advocates for the power of friendship, and we are here to guide all of us through the many challenges and joys that come with building and maintaining strong, meaningful connections with those around us.
Join us each week as we deep dive into the intricacies of friendship, from navigating conflicts to fostering new relationships and everything in between. With insightful interviews, personal anecdotes, and expert advice, Friendeavor is the perfect podcast for anyone looking to strengthen their bonds with the people they love.
So, whether you are on the go, taking care of chores, or just settling in, get ready to explore the world of friendship on Friendeavor, the podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Friendeavor, the podcast. I'm your host, Danielle.
And I'm Kayla. Welcome back.
And we are thrilled that you are here, and we're going to do something a little bit different today. For the most part, we kind of present a topic, break it down, and talk about it. We thought for this episode, we would kind of model how you can start and have conversations with your friends, particularly things of depth. It's not something that you're going to probably be getting to know them about their birthday and their favorite color at this stage. You're going to be close enough to them, but you're still trying to grow and strengthen that friendship. So we've prepared a couple of questions for each other. And again, we're going to model. It's not staged, but we are going to we're just going to have a normal conversation. I mean, we're sister-in-laws. We talk about stuff all the time anyway. So basically we're just going to have a regular conversation and you guys are going to get to listen in.
And, a lot of these scripts can sound, just like that, scripted. And it's okay, how am I going to have this conversation with my friend? How am I going to say, what are all your big dreams? But really, the goal of this episode is to show you how casual and what's the word I'm looking for? Just seamless
Relaxed.
It can be.
Yeah, seamless. Yes. Yeah. And then one thing is, so I said that we prepared questions for each other, but also we might branch off of those. We might not follow the same script. When we think about life experience, we're going to tag into it. Yeah. And that's how your conversations with your friends are going to grow, or your bond is going to grow as your conversation ebbs and flows. So my first question for Kayla is, so say we're sitting around, we're having coffee, we're just chilling, and a mutual friend comes up. This is the scenario that I'm setting up. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've noticed that they've been hurting or they're going through a tough time. How would you deal with that, Kayla? How, I'm sharing an experience that my friend is having. They're feeling hurt or disrespected or something. How would you help support them in that time? Because you're giving now me tips on how to deal with that.
Yeah. So, that made me think of a situation from a couple weeks ago. It's a little bit different because it's more of a mentor-mentee situation. But the number one thing is, okay, if you gave me that information that they're going through a hard time, they didn't give it to me themselves. Mm-hmm. It's kind of harder to approach because you don't, asking probing questions, you don't know if they're really welcoming that. So that's one thing you need to consider is how to approach that conversation in a way that's not just hey, tell me what's going through your mind right now,
what's going on in your life, all these details, let's hear it.
Yeah, right. So I had a situation a couple weeks ago. It was after church. Someone I'm trying to mentor, and they just mentioned, I've been really busy this week, but it wasn't ooh, I'm exhausted. It was bad week. That's the sense I got. And it ended up just 2-3 hour conversation after church. We were the last ones in the building. And
those are sometimes the best. That's happened to me and my friends before too. It doesn't have to be, but it just, and you can't force that kind of thing. Usually you can't be okay, we're going to have a 3-hour meeting at the church.
No. And that's
not how that works.
Normally, I want to be an approachable person and you can talk to me about anything. Normally, I wouldn't even want to plan that.
Right.
Let me get home.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great. It's definitely a moment you just have to hold someone. But, since they gave the vibe that it was a bad week, I just decided to ask them more questions. And I didn't jump right into, are you depressed?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was oh, yeah? So, I was tell me about some of the things that were not normal for you this week. And, they gave me some
So an open-ended question.
Right.
to let them share on their own terms.
Exactly. It wasn't so specific where it's like, that's uncomfortable. They can share whatever they want with me, like as little or as much.
Yeah.
And they decided, like, as we asked more questions, they shared more and more, and it ended up to be a really great conversation. And we talked about some tactics for healing and growth, and they did end up sharing with me that they felt depressed the last couple weeks and everything. So it was a really great conversation, and you don't have to start it out by being intrusive.
Yeah.
Now, you can get a little more and more intrusive and, like, feel it out.
Yeah.
Feel out their comfortability. But,
yeah.
Yeah. It was a great conversation.
I would imagine time is a factor, too. Like, if you were having a 15-minute conversation, you wouldn't be like, okay, let's get through these upper layers so we can get to the depth. But just because of the nature of having a 3-hour conversation, you're inevitably going to get there because not that you would run out of things to say, but that topic can only go so far on one level, especially when you're trying to support them. Yeah. So I can see how that would, well, that's good. So it seems like creating a safe space for them to open up if they feel like it, and then being able to guide them is a good way to show empathy.
Exactly. If they want to. That's a big thing. Because I've also been in a situation where it's like, you are trying to counsel me right now, and I don't want it.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what I'm wanting right now.
And the environment is so important for that.
Yes.
If you're at a party and everyone's hanging out and you've cornered someone on the couch and be like, tell me about your life.
Yes.
Like, I tell my sister a lot, like, you know, the phrase, this is not the time or the place. Sometimes it's not the time, but it is the place. Like, someone's house would be the place, but it's not the time because it's a party happening. Or maybe it's a good time, but this is the wrong place. Like, we're spending time together at a coffee shop, but this is not the place to be talking about that kind of stuff out in public.
Yes.
So time and place are not exclusive to each other, but when you typically hear that phrase, you hear, this is not the time or the place. Well, sometimes it is the time, it's just not the place. Sometimes it's the place and not the time. So that's just something to be aware of.
All right, and I have a question for Danielle.
Spill it.
How do you navigate situations where your values conflict with societal norms or expectations?
That is so layered. And I mean, we did set these up, so that's totally fine. But okay, break it down one more time. I think there's multiple ways I'm going to go with this. So say it one more time.
So how do you navigate specific situations where your values conflict with the societal norms or expectations of those around you?
You want the short answer? Yeah. I get out of that situation.
Get out.
If I'm in an environment where, and it doesn't happen a lot these days because of, you know, the path my life has taken. I work from home. My dad is my coworker, you know, and so it's not like I've got my coworkers beating down my door to change my values or anything like that. But in high school and that kind of thing, when situations would turn, I would leave. I didn't make a big show about it, but I would slip away because my values are more important than the expectation of that group. And I say this phrase a lot on the podcast, so people are probably sick of it, but group think. You don't even have to pretend to have group think.
Yeah.
You don't have to just nod to keep the peace. Like, get out of there.
Right.
Your values are so much more important. And in the same instance, when you have a friend who might be more, I can't think of the word, like, they could fall prey to that more easily, subjective to it or something like that. You can help guide them out of that situation too, because a lot of times societal norms can take people down, but if you can take the lead and help lead someone out of that, you're only helping them. You don't have to, again, I don't want to say like, oh, you know, bless God, I don't believe that, grab their hand and rip them out. That's not what this is about. This is about making a safe place for you and your friends. And because in this scenario, you're in a situation where a societal norm goes against your beliefs. So that would make me think that you're in an environment that also goes against your beliefs. If you're out to lunch with a bunch of friends from school, like, you know, say you're in law school like Kara is, and they do something weird, well, you're not just gonna grab your food and march away.
Right.
But you just hold your own, don't have to cause a debate, but keep your peace, but know more than anything in the world what you believe. Because if you don't know what you believe, you will start to hear what other people will say. And the 365 journal is a very rudimentary way of knowing what you believe. It's kind of like step one. If you can get a reactionary response to like, I believe this, I think this, I would rather go here on vacation, and you can just say that about yourself, you've taken the time to start to understand what you believe. Maybe I should do another volume where I talk about like heavy things, because that's the next step. Being able to know what you believe and articulate it.
Mm-hmm.
So in that environment, even if it's just for yourself, to know what you believe. Yeah. I have a friend who was in a situation where it's not doctrinally they believed something else, but it was like a hotly debated Christian topic. Mm. And they believed one way and the group believed another way, and they started to kind of like, oh man, maybe they're right. It's not right or wrong. It's not a heaven or hell issue, but they started to question if they still believed what they believed because of someone else's influence. But then they read a book and they're like, oh yeah, that's right, I do believe this. So if you are firm in what you believe, those societal pressures and environments and norms are not going to be able to take you down as easily. So for me, the short answer is get out of that situation.
Right.
But the long answer is know what you believe.
Yeah.
And be able to articulate it to no one else but yourself, unless they ask. If
right.
that opens up, then that's a door that's opened up for you to be able to talk about that kind of stuff.
Well, and there may be times where you can't get out. I think of a situation, I'm not going to be super specific, and within the last few years, I was in a situation where, like, it was a sleepover, so you can't just get up and walk away.
Right.
You're kind of just there. And there was this conversation happening that I was like, I don't agree with what's being discussed. I don't agree with the idea of what's being discussed. And so I was just quiet, and that's okay too. Like, if you cannot get out, you just be quiet. Don't say anything. You don't have to agree with everyone. But then when it came to the point where I was asked what my take was on it, yeah, I'm not gonna sit there and be all neutral. I'm gonna say what my take is.
Yeah.
And then and then make it clear, I don't want this to turn into a debate. I'm not trying to persuade you my way, but you asked me what I think, and this is what I think. So
yeah,
I'm giving you an explanation for my standoffishness.
Yeah. And if they fight you on it, like, okay, so there's a difference between someone asking you what you believe and then asking you what you believe to try to dissuade you from thinking that way. Stand your ground. Like, this is the reason. I teach my kids, we're going really hard right now on claims, evidence, and reasoning. You make a claim, you provide your evidence, and the reasoning is the bridge between the evidence and the claim. So, like, if you think of claims as its own island and evidence as its own island, reasoning is the bridge that connects those two. Yeah. Because you can make a claim and you can provide evidence, but if the evidence doesn't make sense, then it's not going to mean anything. So you have to provide reason for it. So if you made your claim, provided your evidence for what you believe, and once you have given reason, that's no longer your issue.
Yeah.
Like, if they don't want to if they don't even want to accept your reasoning, they don't have to believe it. But if they don't want to validate why you believe what you believe, you can't talk to them. You can't win with them. You're not going to have a rational conversation with someone who cannot respect your own reasoning.
Right.
That's not going to help. So there's a lot of ways you can go about that, which leads me to my next question for you. How do you handle conflicts or disagreements within your relationships? And this could be your like platonic relationships, say like people you work with or whatever, or your friendships, or familial. You can take 1, 3, 2, whatever you want, and just tell me, do you have like a base, like is there a way that you start by hearing them out, or just walk me through your, if it's not a formula, your general process.
So it really isn't a formula because there's so many variables. Like,
that's so true.
How close are you? What is the situation? How often does this come up? I just told my husband today. Yeah, there was a something I was telling my husband about today, and he was like, "Why don't you just have a direct conversation with them about that?" I was like, "Because it doesn't happen often enough. It's like once in a blue moon, and to me, it's not worth it to me to have that conversation and compromise whatever." Because it just happens so little often. Yeah. So, that's a variable, is how often does it happen. If it doesn't happen that often, but, there are things that, like, they're huge, and even if they don't happen that often, if they're, like, super big, then that needs to be addressed. So, all that to say, there's a lot of different,
yeah,
a lot of different things. How close are you? And we've talked about this so much, but like, if they are on the bottom 2 or 3 tiers of your friendship pyramid, and they do something to upset you or that you just didn't like, well, you really have the option whether or not to maintain a relationship with that person. It's not, you know, if it's your best friend, then you desire to maintain that relationship.
Yeah, the
and you
tiers
need to have,
change based off of time
yeah,
spent and desire to spend time spent.
exactly,
You can
desire.
spend a bunch of time with people, but if you don't want to spend time with them, like a coworker, they're probably an acquaintance.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't spend a lot of time, but you want to, it's probably a spacing issue, like across the country. But if you desire to spend time with them and you do spend time with them, that's going to open up more avenues for you to have conversations that you need to have.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, um, yeah, I mean, when stuff gets stuffed under the rug, it's not good. It builds up resentment, it builds up all sorts of things, and your relationships suffer for it. So, if you close friends, best friends, and there's conflict, just have a direct conversation, and that again take into consideration time and place.
Yeah.
And don't just come at them attacking them. Just put it in the form of a boundary, or like, hey, what are your thoughts on this, or what happens for you when you say this to me? Like, what's going through your head?
What about family? Does that play the same role with family?
If your family are close friends, best friends,
Okay.
which in both of our families we would consider close friends, best friends. So yeah, I mean,
Kara said something funny. I think it was yesterday. Because she's very non-confrontational, and like, it's not that she won't confront, it's just that she doesn't want to have to do it, and she considers herself very low conflict individual. She's like, so many things that get said don't need to be said because it just causes conflict. And I told her, I was like, but I can't let things go. And I'm not the only one in my family who can't let things go, but I'm also like,
oh no, you're not.
I'm not trying to fight someone for the sake of fighting them. I really want my point to get across, and when they say something stupid, I can't let it go, because it's proving that they don't see my angle.
Yeah.
And they're not really trying to see my angle, because both of us are both, stuck in what we think. But also, if you say something wrong, it's not like a need to correct you, but so that you understand that I'm not dumb. Like, I didn't just say that because I thought, I just pulled it out of the air. Some people just pull stuff out of the air and say it's gospel truth. So Kara says, like, a lot of things, you just let it go. And I'm like, no. Because it really doesn't resolve things. Just letting go of conflict. I mean, yeah, there's probably sometimes that I don't have to say things that I do say. But also, I'm not one of those just let it go people, because when it comes up again, then we're going to be in the same spot, maybe even worse.
Yeah.
Worse than where we were originally in this conversation. So, yeah, I could see how maybe a family situation, you might even consider yourself closer than best friends, because you might get a little bit more snippy with each other, because you you can.
Other,
Yeah.
Yep.
So, that's definitely going to play a factor.
Okay, so another question for Danielle. Can you identify a turning point or like a pivotal moment in your personal development journey?
So, I am the type of person who learns so much more about what I don't want to be than what I do want to be.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a universal thing, but I have found since I hit like basically late teens, 17, 18, that I've learned, even so for the past 10 years, the situations that I encountered in life, I typically take away something that I don't want to be out of it instead of what I do want to be. So to point to a specific moment and be like, oh, that just changed my life. Even conferences, people go to conferences and be like, oh, that changed my life. Like, I'll never be the same. First of all, how many life-altering moments can you have before you come back to the point that you were? That's being a little bit facetious, but because I know spiritually it's completely different. But in those moments, those pivotal life-changing moments, more than not, I don't know if 9 times out of 10 is right, maybe 4 out of 5, but I find like what I don't want to be. So I think about a situation when I was 17. So I'm 27 now. 17 in my mind was still pretty young, right? And a fully adult woman who has been in church for like 30, 40 years said something about me in front of me that was super aggressive. And I'll just go ahead and say it. She said that I was demon possessed.
Why have I never heard this?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'll tell you the full story after this
conversation for you guys and finding out actual new things.
If we were truly modeling it, I would break down the whole details for you. But for right now, I'll just tell you that, yeah. Yeah, she did. Mm-hmm. She's demon possessed. She said that in front of me. About me.
Oh.
And so I will tell you the setting after we get off the recording. And so I was infuriated. I could not like breathe. I was like,
she wasn't joking.
No.
What on earth?
No, she wasn't. Again, I'll tell you the context after this, but I was wearing okay, and so it's got a high neck, and I'm pulling at it because I'm so mad. Like, I can't breathe. I'm like worked up. I was like, how dare you? And I'm not one to get worked up like that. Okay, but it was the context. Something else had happened earlier that day that was not great. And so I was already kind of feeling something like that. And then she said that. And I was like, are you kidding me? So I'm just like, ooh, I am ready to swing. Okay, I'm like, what? So I'm grabbing my collar, and London, actually. She was standing next to me. She was standing next to me, and she goes, okay, well, in the setting, she's like, well, you're not singing. So she goes, go change. So I go out, and I go and change, and I'm like pacing back and forth. I'm like, oh, I'm so mad. Again, I'm 17. I come down and go around to the front, and I send an usher to go get my mom.
Oh, wow.
And so we are in the coffee shop, because that's when she ran it back then. And we're standing in the coffee shop, and I'm telling her what happened, and she's like, okay, we're going to get Bebby. So she sends the usher back out there to get Bebby to come, like, walk me through this, because my mom, we'd only been here for like a year and a half. And Bebby is brilliant and sweet and loving, and we were very close. I mean, we're still, like, I still love her, but we were very close back then because I worked for her. And so she sends to get Bebby, and Bebby comes back, and she's like, oh my God, Danielle, what happened? And I'm telling her, and she's getting mad, but she's trying not to show me that she's getting mad because she wants to help me through this. And she's like, basically take it as a grain of salt, and she walks me through it during the entire worship set. She is like helping me through this because I was incensed. I mean, first of all, who says that to anyone, let alone a kid?
Who it is not true of whom it is not
true. Right?
Like,
and so I'm like, anyways, I get through it. I go out, we sit in the back, like in the bottom of the risers, and Becca was my neighbor at the time. So she texts me after. She texts me after church. She's like, is everything okay? And I was like, yeah, it's fine. She's like, no, you're a liar. Come out to my car. So we went and sat in the parking lot of our houses for like 2 hours and talked about it again.
Oh my word.
And then the next day we had prayer meeting. And Pastor came up to me. He goes, I was so mad when I heard that happen to you last night. Oh, I was so mad.
That's hilarious.
I don't even remember what your question was. What was your question? Pivotal moments.
Yes. That was one of them.
That is what comes to mind as far as pivotal moments. Oh, I'm laughing because it's all the memories are coming back. It's kind of funny now, but I'm still, like, I don't have resentment to this person anymore. Like we talked about last week, forgiveness. But I did learn so much about what not to be in that moment. And on the other side, I learned what to be because what, Bebby helped me, how she helped me through it and everything. But just like, they say sticks and stones will break my bones, or words will never hurt me, blah, blah, blah. That's childish. Like, words hurt, especially from someone who's older than you. I mean, like, I didn't really respect, like, I respect her as an adult, but they, like, there's some people that you don't have any relationship with, and so therefore you just kind of, like, kind of respect them because of who they are, but not because of anything that they've earned from you. Yeah. And so it really went downhill after that for the respect area. Anyways, sure. So as far as pivotal moments, that is one that comes to mind as far as realizing what you don't want to be.
Yeah.
And for anyone, now I know we're talking to each other, but for anyone who's listening to our conversation right now, just kind of look at, like, if you don't already have that perspective, go ahead and add that lens. Mm-hmm. You don't have to go around looking for negatives, like, okay, ew, I don't want to be like that. Ew, I don't want to do that. But if something happens to you, look at the whole situation.
Yeah.
Okay, I know how that made me feel, therefore I will not do that. I refuse to make someone feel that way.
Yes.
And on the other hand, I know how she made me feel, and I want to help people feel that same way, that they're worth something.
Yeah. That
they belong. That they're loved and they matter, and of course they're not demon possessed, and you know, all the joke things. But so the way that Bebby made me feel just helped me process that, and then develop the thick skin for if that were to ever happen again, not to confront them, but to be like, wow, only an idiot would say something like that to a 17-year-old girl.
Yeah.
So that's my pivotal moment.
Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, you learn what you don't want to be and what you do want to be. That's a big takeaway for me. I think, and we're gonna interview our moms soon, so stay tuned for that. But in that episode, we're gonna talk about how to help your kids maintain safe friendships.
Yeah, have safe friendships.
Safe friendships. Big emphasis on safe. Like, my mom never, like, facilitated gossip with me, but if I ever came to her and said, oh, guess what happened? This, and all this drama, you know, she would use those stories that I would tell her to, like, point things out to me, like, in her adult wisdom that I couldn't see. Like, what do you think was going through her mind when she said that to so-and-so? Yeah, how do you think that made so-and-so feel? Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness, you should never make someone feel like that. Like, and it, you know, luckily that was modeled for me. But if it wasn't, and nobody was there, like, posing those questions for you, these are great questions. The questions that Danielle, just the prompts that you ask yourself in those situations. Those are great if nobody is asking them to you.
Yeah. Can we put some of these questions together and get them out to the people?
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. Yeah,
so we will get these out for you guys. I don't know. We'll put on Instagram or send them out or something like that. Mm-hmm. If that's something you want. I mean, we hope this little hangout sesh with Kayla and I helped teach you something. And if it didn't teach you anything, I hope you made a laugh that someone told me I was demon possessed when I was 17. Kayla,
we spilled the tea, so we hope you guys drink it.
I'll give you, Kayla, the full details in a few minutes when we click off here.
We log off here.
Yeah. Wow, that brought back some memories. Anyways, we are so delighted that you decided to stop by this week. Thank you for letting us have the week off last week. Our No Limits conference was happening, and we're excited to be back, and we've got some really great guests lined up. We're still working on some dates for a very special guest, and hopefully we'll be able to get that set up very, very soon. And you can expect that to be on the podcast and on the YouTube channel. So if you prefer to watch your content, that'll be there. But in the meantime, thanks so much for stopping by Friendeavor this week. We hope you have a fantastic rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Friendeavor the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed today's content, leave a review and share with a friend. You can find the show notes on our website, www.friendeavor.net, and in the description of this episode.
Friendship is a journey. It's an endeavor. We'll see you next time on Friendeavor.